Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we extract the most important nuggets of knowledge to help you stay well informed. Today, we're looking at, well, a real paradox Africa. You might picture this continent just brimming with potential incredible landscapes, amazing resources. Yet, for hundreds of millions of people, just having reliable electricity, that simple hum, it's still a distant dream. And Africa faces this huge dual challenge. First, there's the urgent need to tackle widespread energy poverty, energy injustice, really. And second, it has to confront the global climate crisis, which is ironic because the continent contributes, what, only about 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet it's incredibly vulnerable to climate impacts. So our deep dive today centers on a pretty groundbreaking study. It's titled Pathway for a Fully Renewable Power Sector of Africa by 2050, emphasizing on flexible generation from biomass. It basically lays out a strategic blueprint, a bold vision actually, for hitting universal energy access, boosting economic growth, and meeting climate goals. And as we unpack this, you'll see there's a surprising, quite significant role for sustainable biomass in this future. And honestly, this isn't just about Africa, the kind of innovative thinking here. It could really reshape how we all think about energy transitions globally. Okay, so let's start by trying to really get a handle on the sheer scale of the energy challenge Africa is up against. We think of sunshine, wind, resources, but the electricity picture, it tells a very different story.
It really does. It's a stark contrast, potential versus the current reality. Right now, electricity access across the entire continent is only about 47.9%.
Wow, less than half.
Exactly. Compare that to the global average, which was 90% back in 2019. And if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, the average person uses maybe 150 kilowatt hours of electricity a year.
150 kilowatt, that's tiny compared to global usage.
A mere fraction. And this huge energy deficit, well, it's compounded because almost 80% of the current electricity generation still relies on fossil fuels. So that really holds back economic growth and, of course, contributes heavily to pollution.
Okay, so Africa clearly needs a massive build-out. New power plants, new transmission lines, all the works. But here's the dilemma, right? How do you expand access that much without just locking in more fossil fuels, more emissions? Especially when you've got goals like the African Union's Agenda 2063, aiming specifically for clean energy for everyone. How does the study propose tackling that?
Well, this study offers a very concrete pathway. It uses something called the LUT Energy System Transition Model. It's basically a sophisticated tool and optimization model that simulates the least cost way to get to a fully renewable power sector for Africa by 2050. And what's really crucial here is how rigorously it looks at the role of sustainable bioenergy. Not just continent-wide, but with really detailed hourly and high geographical resolution, so it considers the different conditions across Africa.
That sounds incredibly detailed. Now, you mentioned sustainable biomass. When people hear biomass, sometimes they think, burning wood, maybe unsustainably. Can you clarify what sustainable biomass actually means in the context of this study?
That's a really important distinction to make, yeah. For this study, sustainable biomass is defined very strictly. It's only waste and residues.
Only waste?
Yeah, we're talking about things like crop residues, what's left after harvest, forest residues, livestock manure, fecal sewage sludge, even municipal solid waste. Critically, energy crops, things grown specifically for energy, they are explicitly excluded.
Why exclude those?
For environmental sustainability reasons, to avoid competing with food production or causing land use change. And even for the residues they do include, there are strict limits. Like only 70% of forestry biomass potential is considered usable, only 35% for crop residues. This really ensures that only truly sustainable sources are part of the plan, avoiding negative impacts.
Got it. So very careful definitions there. And the study sets up two scenarios to compare, right? BPS-1, which is 100% renewable but without bioenergy, and BPS-2, which is also 100% renewable but includes this sustainable bioenergy component. So what happens when you compare those two? What does it tell us about biomass's actual impact?
Well, the comparison is quite revealing. It shows that sustainable biomass isn't just some minor add-on. It's actually pivotal. First off, the total potential for sustainable bioenergy in Africa, just from these waste streams, is estimated at a massive 1911 terawatt hours.
Wow, okay. That's huge potential.
It is. But the study is strategic. It only allocates about 17.5% of that, around 335 terawatt hours, specifically to the power sector.
Only 17.5%. Why so little, relatively speaking?
Because the rest of that potential is reserved for other uses, where it might be even more valuable, things like producing heat, biofuels for transport, maybe even biomass to chemicals. It's about maximizing the benefit across the whole economy.
Okay, that makes sense. Smart allocation. Which countries stand out as having the most of this sustainable potential?
Nigeria actually leads the pack with an estimated 256.5 TWH potential. Then you have Egypt at 163.6 TWH, Ethiopia with 128.7, South Africa at a 118.1, and Tanzania around a 115.5 TWH.
Interesting mix.
And it's worth noting, crop residues make up the biggest chunk, about 61% of that total potential. That really highlights the agricultural base across much of the continent.
Right. So even though only a fraction, that 17.5%, goes to the power sector,
Yeah.
what kind of impact does that fraction have on the whole energy system when you compare BPS-2 with bioenergy to BPS-1 without it?
The impact is really substantial, and it's primarily because biomass offers flexible generation.
Flexible generation. Okay,
Right.
what does that mean in practice?
It means that unlike solar PV or wind, which depend on the weather, biomass power plants can be turned on or off or ramped up and down pretty much on demand. They provide crucial balancing for the grid.
Ah, okay, so they fill the gaps when solar or wind aren't available.
Exactly. And when you introduce this flexible bioenergy in BPS2, you see a whole cascade of benefits across the system. First, the total installed capacity needed for electricity generation actually decreases by 8.4% by 2050. It drops from 1714 gigawatts down to 1,570 gigawatts.
So you need less total stuff built.
Precisely. And second, the total amount of electricity generated also decreases by about 8.6%.
Wait, why would total generation go down?
It's about efficiency. Less energy is lost in storage cycles and transmission because the system is better balanced overall. And more specifically, just having 22 gigawatts of biomass capacity installed by 2050 in that BPS2 scenario, it leads to needing 141 gigawatts less solar PV capacity. That's a 10% reduction. And 8 gigawatts less wind capacity, which is nearly 20% less wind needed compared to the scenario without biomass. It's because that reliable, dispatchable biomass power reduces the need to overbuild the variable renewables just to meet peak demand or cover lulls.
Okay, so biomass acts as this, like, stability anchor in the system. Does that flexibility just mean less generation capacity needed, or are there other knock-on effects, other system-wide benefits?
Oh, absolutely. The benefits ripple right through the system. Its dispatchable nature creates huge efficiencies. Maybe the most dramatic impact is on energy storage.
Okay.
Total storage discharge, the amount of energy taken out of storage decreases by a massive 47.1% in the scenario with bioenergy, BPS2.
Nearly half.
Yeah, it drops from over 2,000 TWH down to just over 1,000 TWH by 2050. Essentially, having that flexible bioenergy avoids the need for almost 1,000 TWH of extra storage outcome, mostly from batteries, which would otherwise be needed to balance the grid.
That must save a fortune on batteries alone.
It certainly points that way. And beyond storage, you also see lower grid utilization. Because biomass plants can often be sited to meet local demand, less power needs to be traded over long distances between regions.
Ah, makes sense.
That leads to about a 13% reduction in grid use and power exchange across the continent in BPS2. Less strain on the transmission lines. And critically, it means lower overall costs.
Right.
The levelized cost of electricity, basically the average lifetime cost per unit of energy, is about 10% lower in BPS2. It drops to around 37 euros per megawatt hour by 2050, compared to over 41 euros in the scenario without biomass.
And that's a direct result of needing less generation, less storage, less transmission.
Exactly. It just makes the whole system more efficient and economically attractive. And one more key point, faster decarbonization.
How so? If both scenarios reach zero by 2050.
While both hit zero CO2 emissions eventually, the BPS2 scenario with biomass actually records lower emissions throughout the transition period. It leads to about 5.4% less cumulative CO2 being emitted over the whole pathway to 2050.
Why is that?
Because biomass, when it's sourced sustainably from waste like this, is considered carbon neutral. It effectively displaces fossil fuels earlier and more completely during the transition years compared to relying solely on variable renewables and storage.
That's really compelling how one component, biomass, when it's integrated smartly, creates such widespread benefits. It's not just adding another fuel source, it's fundamentally changing the system design for the better. What is it about biomass specifically that makes it so good at this balancing act compared to, say, just building more batteries or using hydropower?
Well, it's that inherent dispatchability, as we said. Hydropower is also dispatchable, and it plays a crucial role too, but its potential is often geographically limited and can have seasonal variations or environmental concerns.
Hmm.
Batteries are fantastic for short duration balancing, shifting solar power from midday to evening, for example.
Mhm.
But for longer periods, or providing that steady base load or flexible ramp up, biomass power plants can often be more cost effective than building absolutely massive battery farms.
I see.
They can generate electricity precisely when needed, for as long as needed, using a locally sourced fuel. That makes them a really strong complement to the variable renewables like solar and wind. It helps optimize the whole system, reducing the need to overbuild solar and wind and minimizing reliance on very large-scale storage. And, these findings, they really line up perfectly with big global goals, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement,
Yeah.
and also with Africa's own ambitions, like Agenda 2063. This transition to a defossilized power sector, driven by these abundant, low-cost renewables. This study shows it's not just technically possible, it's actually economically attractive.
Right.
Solar PV and battery storage are still the workhorses, no doubt. They provide over 80% of the generation, ensuring the 2047 supply. But they're critically supported, made more efficient and affordable by dispatchable hydro and this flexible bioenergy.
It paints a really powerful picture for the future. But let's be realistic. The current reality of biomass use in many parts of Africa is still very traditional, isn't it? Like firewood for cooking, which we know has huge negative impacts, health, environment. What this study envisions sounds like a complete paradigm shift from that reality.
It absolutely is, and that's a crucial point. You're right, over 700 million Africans currently rely on traditional biomass.
Yeah.
You can picture families, often women and children, spending hours collecting firewood. The indoor air pollution from inefficient stoves.
Yeah.
It leads to deforestation, soil degradation, serious respiratory illnesses. It's a major development challenge. What this study proposes is a fundamental transition away from that harmful, inefficient use towards modern, sustainable biomass applications, specifically for electricity. This isn't just about cleaner energy. It's about creating income opportunities from waste collection, improving energy security, and delivering massive health benefits.
Okay, so it's a leap from traditional, often harmful use to modern, sustainable power generation. That sounds like a huge undertaking. What are the main hurdles, the barriers to actually making that shift happen across such a vast and diverse continent?
Yeah, there are definitely significant hurdles to overcome. It's not simple. First, there's often just a lack of awareness, among decision makers, maybe investors, about the mature, available technologies for converting biomass cleanly and efficiently.
Okay, awareness gap.
Second, handling the biofuels themselves can be tricky. Waste biomass often has high moisture content, which needs proper treatment, or it burns inefficiently. Third, biomass itself is just messy. It's heterogeneous. Crop residues are different from manure, which is different from wood waste. Handling that variety is complex.
Right, it's not like uniform pellets.
Exactly. Fourth, compared to fossil fuels, biomass has a lower energy density, so you need to transport larger volumes for the same energy output, which adds cost. Fifth, the actual markets for collecting, processing, and using this biomass are often really underdeveloped. There aren't established supply chains everywhere.
Logistics.
Logistics are a huge challenge, yeah. The wasted residues are often scattered across wide rural areas. Getting them efficiently to a power plant site is a major practical problem. And one specific limitation we should acknowledge from this study, they didn't factor in the cost of waste reception and handling for municipal solid waste into their LCOE calculations.
Ah, okay. So the real cost for MSW might be slightly higher.
Potentially, yeah. It's something to keep in mind when looking at those specific economics.
Okay, so challenges remain, definitely. But wrapping this up, our deep dive into this study, Pathway for a Fully Renewable Power Sector of Africa by 2050, emphasizing on flexible generation from biomass. It really does sketch out a future for Africa's power sector that's not only 100% renewable by 2050, but potentially more affordable, more stable, and cleaner than just continuing down the current path.
That's the key takeaway, I think. The strategic integration of sustainable biomass, specifically using those wastes and residues.
Mhm.
It acts as this crucial flexible support for the dominant solar and battery core. And by doing that, it significantly cuts overall system costs, it reduces the need for massive infrastructure buildouts, and it actually helps speed up the journey to zero emissions. It's really a powerful demonstration of why having diverse and flexible renewable sources is so important for these complex energy transitions.
Absolutely. And this vision, it's about so much more than just the technical side, the kilowatts and megawatt hours. It's really about improving millions of lives, boosting economy sustainably, and maybe even setting an example for the rest of the world on how to tackle energy and climate together. So here's a final thought for you to consider. If harnessing local waste, things we often just throw away or ignore, can unlock such transformative benefits for an entire continent's energy system. How might we, in our own communities, wherever we are, start rethinking the hidden energy potential that's maybe right under our noses in our own backyards? Could tapping into that help us build more resilient, more localized, and ultimately more sustainable energy systems too? This has been a deep dive into Pathway for a Fully Renewable Power Sector of Africa by 2050, emphasizing on flexible generation from biomass.